The word crisis gets used a lot these days, but it is applicable on a number of policy fronts, from drugs and addiction to affordable housing to mental health. All three of those issues are tangled up in the growing problems New Hampshire cities are facing with homelessness. This morning we're joined in studio by Adrienne Boulogne, the new Director of Homeless Initiatives in Manchester. Safe to say you've got one of the toughest jobs in New Hampshire right now. We thank you for taking some time to explain to the people and talk to us about what's going on.
Great, happy to be here.
So you're the point person in Manchester. What's the most important thing for people to know about what's going on here and what's being done about it?
So the situation in Manchester is definitely concerning. It's concerning across all cities in the United States and all over the world. And so we are doing what a lot of people are doing right now, is really trying to get on top of the issue and figure out how best to have kind of short-term solutions and long-term planning so that we can, make the city thrive in every aspect that it needs to, and that includes the folks that are suffering with homelessness. We want them to thrive and rehabilitate and do well, and we also need the city to thrive and the businesses to thrive here as well.
If there was an easy solution right now, it would have been implemented already. But what makes this situation a little different? When I talk to a lot of people, they're saying, gosh, this is so much worse than usual. What has changed in the last few months?
Yeah, I think all over the country, what has changed in the last few years is important to talk about, just because there's been a real epidemic of substance use disorder happening in the opiate epidemic. That has really thrown homelessness into a new loop where substance use is just really complicated issue right now, and it's really caused a lot of homelessness and maybe perpetuated homelessness in a lot of situations. Then with the pandemic, we all kind of witnessed the impact that had on the existing epidemic and homelessness in general. It just exacerbated all the issues for the folks that were suffering. It exacerbated issues for folks that were kind of marginally housed or living in poverty, falling into homelessness. So we've really been in a tough time. The social service agencies have also been through a lot, kind of given these different issues I mentioned in the pandemic, and having to pivot and shift and manage and staffing issues. And so it's been a really difficult last few years to try to address a growing problem and figure out ways to manage.
Specifically for Manchester, what's on your checklist? What needs to be done and what can be done?
So what needs to be done is, we need to find housing solutions for folks that are suffering with homelessness. So that includes affordable housing in order to manage just folks that have limited incomes and need to have sustainable kind of housing solutions that work for them, all the way to kind of deeply subsidized housing that would impact even the homeless population being able to live in housing with little to no income. So we need housing solutions. We also need shelter solutions in the interim time. We have some emergency shelter in the state, but it's not enough. So statewide, that's a big issue. In Manchester, it's a big issue as well. I estimate that we have anywhere between 200 and 250 unhoused homeless individuals in Manchester, kind of living in different encampments. The one that's downtown gets a lot of attention, and it certainly deserves that attention, and we need to be focused on those individuals that are so visibly suffering. But there's a lot of folks that are out in the woods and kind of all around in pockets, and we certainly know that to be true. It'll be interesting to do our point in time count this year, which happens in a couple weeks, to kind of see what the numbers are like. But we're looking at 250 people that are out there without homes, and that's a large number.
You mentioned that high-profile encampment that's set to be evicted essentially in the days ahead.
Yeah.
The ACLU is already saying, essentially threatening a lawsuit, saying they'd like to maintain the status quo. What's the response from the city about why these people need to move?
So on the ACLU thing, it's just so fresh that our legal team is reviewing that, so I'm not going to make any specific comments about that at the moment. But the issue with the folks needing to move from that particular piece of sidewalk is complicated, and it really came down to a decision that was not kind of a directive from my Office of Homeless Initiatives, but more of a directive from the combination of city offices looking at the public health and safety issues. And it's the public health and safety of those that are living inside the tents, and we've been closely monitoring that and working with it, but it's also the public health and safety issues for the neighborhood. So we felt a need to have that sidewalk be kind of reclaimed so that we could manage the safety issues there, and at the same time rapidly trying to deliver solutions for where folks are going to go. So I more than probably anybody else in the city is very concerned with that. The mayor's very concerned with that. All of us are. We don't think that folks should have to be out there without a resource that works for them, and something that I can really contribute to that conversation is there needs to be a variety of different offerings to folks by way of shelter and support. And emergency shelter will work for some folks. An emergency shelter does not work for other folks, and we see that demonstrated by their decision to live in tents. And they do that because of the dignity and privacy that they can afford living by themselves in a tent, and managing that by themselves and not living in an institutional setting.
And what you're describing there is kind of this balancing act that has to be done between the population you're working with and then the property owners and business owners around there. A lot of them have been coming forward lately saying enough, we can't have, in particular in this instance of the daycare where there were sex acts going on outside where the children are.
Yes.
Is it possible to find solutions that can satisfy both ends of that, where you have people feeling safe where they own property and live and work, and then also are able to address the needs of the homeless population? Because right now it seems like it's hard to do both of those things at once.
Yeah, I think that that's a good way to describe that, and I certainly am sympathetic to the business owners' experience. We had a really great meeting on Monday where I sat at the Rex Theater along with our director of overdose prevention to kind of answer questions from our backgrounds, and I found that the community was really, really reasonable in the things that they were asking for, and also there was an outpouring of support and people wanting to help. And I see the vision that I have for how Manchester is going to work together around this problem is having some appreciation that homelessness is an urban problem that is not ever going to be eradicated. And I think that there's a lot of ways, and ways that I've seen demonstrated in other communities I've done this work in, where we can be more integrated as a community and appreciate that the homeless individuals are part of our community. They're our neighbors, and we need to determine best ways we can work together. And there might be mutual kind of benefits to both sides of the homelessness part of the community and the housed part of the community, where we can work hand in hand. There might even be, programs that we can put in place where the business district is utilizing folks that are actively in homelessness to work on, washing their windows and tidying their, flowers and different things that are kind of on the street, manicuring, stuff like that. So there's ways to kind of involve folks and have productive engagement activities that could be mutually respectful and leaning on each other in a community way.
As you add more shelter space, to what extent does that attract more people in need of services and help? Again, another balancing act. In the most extreme form we see with these communities just essentially shipping people here to Manchester to have them provided services. Yeah,
well, we have it happen all the time where when we have emergency shelter beds that are full, we have to send people to other communities. So that's a real reality that has to happen. But we also know that Manchester has a particular pull for people coming in for all kinds of reasons, right? I mean, we're an urban center. We offer a lot of things. We have a lot of services here. We have a lot of service providers here. So there's probably always going to be an attraction for people to come to the city. And I know for the homeless population, they end up where they can get their needs met. And their needs are varied, and sometimes it's services like emergency shelter that draws them, and sometimes it's the urban living environment that supports the survival behaviors that they have that suit them at the time. So, I mean, it's always going to be a draw to some respect, and I think we need to accommodate who's in our city, and we need to provide for them what it is that they need.
Obviously, the homeless population is one that interacts a lot with the police, and this really took on a new dimension, I think, when that Alexandra Eckersley situation happened with the baby being born right around Christmas. Her public defender is now telling her side of the story, saying that essentially she had called 911 and the operator told her to leave the baby on the floor of the tent. She was afraid of the boyfriend that she was with and ended up charged with all these crimes. I'm curious if you think Manchester Police handled this situation appropriately.
Oh, I have no doubt that the Manchester Police handled this situation appropriately. I also think the fire department is uniquely involved in these kind of calls that happen for emergency response, and I have complete faith and trust that those two departments are very strong, and the chiefs that I work with are very skillful, and they have an amazing team.
All right, Adrienne Boulogne, the Director of Homeless Initiatives for Manchester, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the work.
Thank you.